Meave squinted, the better to see the scene. Several dozen dwarves had gathered on the cliff overlooking the chasm. All were turned towards a ramp, at the peak of which stood a barrel.
What is that gathering about?
Asked the Queen.
Have we a feast day?
Nay,
Answered Gabor grimly.
'tis an execution.
A hairy head peeked out of the barrel. The long, pointy nose and ears left no doubt that it belonged to a gnome. The first Meave had ever seen in her life.
Help! Save me!
The gnome yelled.
They aim to kill me! Cast me in the chasm!
Shut your maw!
Barked the dwarf standing next to him, who then shoved the gnome inside the barrel and covered it with a lid.
Your crimes! The sheer weight of it, eh? No lighter punishment is fitting.
The other gathered dwarves nodded approvingly. Two gripped the barrel, lay it on its side, then lifted it to cast in the chasm, paying the thumping from inside it no heed. Meave leapt from her horse, and ignoring Gabor's objections, scrambled up the ramp.
Oi! You're not allowed! Hey, damn it! What do you think you're doing?
I think it's obvious. Preventing the execution.
Thanks be to the gods!
Whoa, wench, you've no such right. Judgment's been handed down. Sentencing's done.
Yes, and a cruel sentence it is. One that prompts me to wonder what the accused did to deserve it.
Better to ask what he didn't do, the varmint. Arrived here with his peddler's wagon full of tricks and gadgets. Went from house to house, praised his rubbish to the high heavens. And what's it he sold us? Bombs that go off in your hand. Beard growth formula that makes your hair catch fire. Music boxes for the kiddies. Once cranked, they never plough in stop.
You needed but to loosen the screw in the back and...
Shut your maw, ye roaster. Doesn't it matter all that? 'Cause we'd have forgiven it if he hadn't broken our sacred rules and hallowed customs.
Which ones, if you don't mind me asking?
Enter the smithy, cap on his head, held nails between his teeth, and poured fruit syrup in his beer. Raspberry. Blech.
Just the once, and but a few drops.
You got nothing to explain your villainy, scoundrel. Not a thing. And that's not even the worst. Saved his highest crime for the end. He was in a mine. And he whistled.
Oh, aye, that's bad. Shouldn't have done that.
Hi, he did. Whistled. Through his teeth. And hummed in harmony, a long warble. We all heard it up and down the shaft, and our grand-elders were clear. Death's the punishment. Death by barrel roll.
Wait 1 minute. What exactly does the Four Dwarfs Codex say? Which stricture did he violate?
What did... How's it a wench, and a human one to boot, know about the code?
This human wench has a head, and a capacious one. Well, have you an answer?
The code says thus. 'Tis a crime most grievous to whistle in a mine. Any dwarf committing the cock-up shall be placed in a barrel at once. Said barrel then to be rolled down a mountain.
Any dwarf. The situation's clear. If my senses do not deceive, the accused is a gnome.
Aye, but the code's not to be taken literal, like. It's to be interpreted. What the ancient elders had in their heads, why, that's got to be divined.
Nothing to be divined here. You got to be a dwarf to be a dwarf, not no bloody gnome.
So, am I, meaning I'm free to go?
Perchance we ought to let the elder-in-chief rule on the matter.
Oh, aye. Oh, for we all ken how old Hoog loves being bothered with such things.
Ugh, fine. Now get the hell out of that barrel and out of my sight, you hairy hamshanker.
My lady, I haven't a way to thank you.
That we've yet to discuss. Perhaps first we should learn each other's names?
Aye, yes, of course. What a prat of me. Barnabas. Barnabas Beckenbauer. To friends, Bibi.
Meve, Queen of Lyria and Rivia.
Queen? Cows in the corn, colour me honoured. Your Majesty, obeisance due.
None necessary. Protocols for use at court, not beyond it. An inventor, you deem yourself. Am I right?
Most assuredly. Though, truth be told, the dwarves saw no ingenuity in my craft. Seems I'm ahead of my time.
Fiery bursts in the palm of your hand. They shall be in fashion one day, to your mind.
Oh, nay, just a bit of misfortune, that's all that was. You see, I mistook mercury fulminate for saltpeter. The vials stood beside each other, see, and...
The details I need not know. But one matter I am curious about. Could you construct a bomb that would explode when desired? For instance, beneath my foe's feet as they stepped over it.
Of course I can. It's simple.
Why then? You wish to show your gratitude? You must join my ranks. Assist me to defeat Nilfgaard.
Defeat Nilfgaard? Pure ambition, that is. But I'd have been a barrel of broken bones at the bottom of a ravine, if not for you. I'll do what you ask to pay off my debt.
And thus, for the first time in Lyrian annals, a gnome enlisted with the army. And though Barnabas Beckenbauer was diminutive of body, this new recruit would prove his worth on more than one occasion.
Well, a damn shame. What with such good visibility today, too?
A blizzard's blowing in. Your Grace, perhaps we'd best pitch camp and wait for clear weather.
Tain't a bad idea. Said we might be waiting a week.
Then we march on. We've no time to waste. While we ride to and fro begging aid, Nilfgaard grows in power. We must obtain reinforcements as quickly as possible and liberate our home.
Meve rode on in silence, endeavoring to work out the length of her exile thus far. A scout's call tore her from her reverie.
Your Grace, you must see this.
With a grave mien, the soldier indicated a track in the snow. The hobnail boot print was all too familiar. Meve had seen it before, upon Lyria's sandy tracks, and midst the ashes to which Edern had been turned.
Nilfgaardian footmen.
Seethed Meve.
Marched through of late.
Interrupted Gascon.
A day, perhaps 2 days past.
The scouts had learned a Nilfgaardian caravan with an armed escort had recently arrived in Mahaka. The invaders had brought with them chests brimming with gold and jewels, then exchanged these for the finest Mahakaman-forged swords and spears. A scout gave me one of the coins the Blackclads had used for payment. Upon the coin's back, the Lyrian eagle.
They pay with gold from my vault.
The Queen said through gritted teeth.
For arms that would cut down my fighting men and subjects.
We might yet pursue and hunt them down,
said Reynard, a spark in his eye.
And make certain Ed Dahi never lays hands on those weapons.
You might, I can.
Piped up Gabor, who had been listening to their exchange.
But you might also recall, we Mahakamans are neutrals who assure all guests within our borders safety. True, formally speaking, the Nilfgaardians have passed outside them, but attack them a stone's throw from our gates, and you'll see Brewer's rage come out his ears as steam, and out his arse as fire.
Gabor, forgive me,
said the Queen.
This caravan we must attack. I must stop the Nilfgaardians. And entirely apart, I should be quite content to watch Brewer spew fire.
Gabor's mouth gaped as he tried to protest, but the Lyrian soldier's laughter drowned out his grunts. Meve gave the signal to depart. Soon after, Queen and company descended upon the foe's caravan, and a battle ensued.
I want that transport in one piece!
The transport's ours.
Crushed by their defeat, the Nilfgaardians tossed the chests into the snow lining the road and rode off with the cracking of their whips. One chest burst open, revealing a weapon wrapped in greased leather. Gascon removed the leather and held aloft a sigil that shone with newly forged luster. He examined it from all sides, then put his thumb to its blade. Blood immediately squirted out.
Ooh! Sharp bastard.
He said, clearly impressed. Hearing these words, Gabor unexpectedly burst out laughing.
What's got you so tickled, if you don't mind my asking?
Custom holds. The first words out a warrior's mouth upon seeing a sill become the blade's name. So, congrats. You've dubbed it.
Gascon stood there awkwardly as Meve took the weapon from him.
I'd have chosen a different name personally, one with a bit more dignity. But Sharp Bastard has an undeniable charm. And I cannot wait to try it out on Nilfgaardian plate.
Aye, but perhaps nae in Mahakam.
Gabor interjected.
You've made a fine enough mess for yourselves as is. Gonna need to mend for it somehow. And that'll nae be easy.
Tidings of Meve's deeds soon reached Bruverhoog's meaty ears. And though there was no fire, despite Gabor's insistence to the contrary, there was also no doubt the Elder-in-Chief was livid. Only the Zigrin's intercession on their behalf kept the Lyrians from being thrown out of the mountains. Meve squinted and gazed off into the distance. It seemed to her that hundreds of black patches covered the peaks on the horizon. Once she had ridden up closer, she realized these were the windows of homes carved out of solid rock.
Our pride this was,
Sighed Gabor.
Burra's Rump. A city carved out of mountain rock. Hundreds of miles of tunnels, dozens of steelworks, smithies and forges. Now, it's a vast lair to monsters. They ooze from underground, weave their nests, hatch their young, and when hunger hits them in the gut, they prowl down into the pass.
Meve stood at the entrance to the underground city. The monumental gate, cast in bronze, lay on the ground, folded multiple times as a scroll of paper. Out of blackened windows oozed a stench of rotting meat and mold. The Queen bent an ear to hear water dripping, and, in the distance, a metallic scraping. A sound akin to chitinous scales rubbing against rock.
The soldiers await your order, Your Grace,
said Reynard quietly, as if he feared he would wake the beasts asleep in the caverns.
Do you recall my words as we fled Lyria?
Said Meve, turning to Reynard.
You swore you would retake your crown, even if you had to penetrate hell to do so.
Time to follow that oath.
The Queen inhaled deeply and stepped forward, her sword raised and prepared to strike or parry. Moments later, it was swinging, fighting, as the current tenants of Borrow's Rump came out to meet her.
Oh, this stench is foul.
I'd like to make it known that us gnomes don't run so fast. You know, in case you were planning to skip out on the quick.
Ah, damn it! They're hatching! Place is about to swarm with creepers! Follow me!
Though wounded, Meve approached the Shaelmar, which lay writhing on the ground. She then ran her sword through its heart, finishing it. Yet so spent was she that she lacked the strength to pull her blade from between the plates of the chitinous armor.
The beast near took me.
She whispered.
It was very close.
The Lyrians reached a vast hall that had once served the clans as their meeting room. The stone benches were covered in sticky slime and insectoid eggs, while bats of varying size hung from the crystal chandeliers. Gascon rummaged through old, weathered bones, surely hoping to find something of value. Gabor, in turn, was at a shut and locked door, grappling with it as if it were a deadly beast. The door finally gave way with a sigh, and the dwarf raised his arms in a triumphant gesture.
It's a storeroom. Should hold miners' tools aplenty,
He said, enthused.
Some barrels of alchemical brews in here too. Lucky there's no sign of moisture. They haven't soaked through. All's we've got to do is roll them out into the corridor and set a bit of fire to them, and whoomph! We'll have sealed the beasts off from the pass once and for all.
Meve treated the dwarves' instructions as hallowed. Soon after, the mountains trembled from a powerful explosion. Rubble came down and blocked the tunnels. They say the plumes of smoke escaping the window openings in the rock could be seen as far as Aldersburg. Dark clouds hovered over the horizon, and a strong gale snapped their banners.
Damn it, a storm's coming. Gabor! Take us to the nearest settlement. We must seek shelter.
Soon the Lyrians arrived in Stuhlkamp. The town square proved full of folk. Several dozen dwarves laden with large sacks and satchels stood about in smaller groups. When a thick snow began to fall, the dwarves cheered. Tears streamed down the cheeks of several, but Meave could not tell if they issued from some fortuitous occurrence, or if the strong wind had wrung moisture from their eyes.
What is it we witness? Why do they rejoice at a snowstorm?
Asked Meave, pulling her hood over her head.
Well, the blizzard's good cause to postpone their expedition by another day.
Gabor responded.
See, they've been conscripted by drawn lots to be settlers. Found homes in a village in Blackbrook Vale. 7 expeditions have gone that way already, and none survived longer than a year. Valley's cursed. No two ways about it.
Intrigued, Meave proceeded to speak with the settlers' leader. He confirmed Gabor's claim. He had buried many a previous colonist. All had been abnormally thin, pale, prematurely greyed, as if some wraith had drawn the lifeblood out of them. Once the dwarf had finished his tale, he gripped the Queen's hand firmly, and promising a generous reward, begged that she and her Lyrians accompany the expedition to Blackbrook Valley.
'Tain't far. Mere few leagues north along the main road. We'll make the march much easier to ken with the whole army, in case of any danger.
I know not how useful our swords can be against curses and spectres,
Said Meave.
but leave you bereft and in need I will not. We shall march with you into Blackbrook Vale and see to it that you are safely arrived. Then we will march on.
The dwarf sped off to announce the good tidings to his settler brethren. By the time the blizzard had abated, they were ready to march. Meave had stopped and was removing packed ice from her mare's fetlocks when Gabor Zigrin approached. The dwarf squatted at the Queen's side, glanced about quickly, then started speaking in a barely audible whisper.
Your Majesty, I overheard some folk talking in the smithy. Birdies claim there's treasure, true riches, in the hills near Blackbrook Vale, south of here. Stowed away there. And nobody dares go looking for it on account of beasts that have made their lairs there. But you've got a wee army behind you. I reckon you could try. Might be worth the risk, eh?
The Queen brushed the snow from her knees and, raising a hand against the glaring sunlight, peered towards the mountains. Though tempted, she had doubts. To start, the rocky scree at their feet warned clearly of avalanches.
I shall think on it.
She answered, before vaulting into her saddle.
Blackbrook Vale holds many secrets and many treasures. Discover your head in the mountains. Hoo-hoo-ha, hoo-hoo-ha, unforgiving winters come. Fear no snow nor icy gale, fight the frost with mugs of ale.
Impossible. I can't believe it. Gascon, he drank a dwarf under the table.
I've said it before, I think, dear Reynard. You simply underestimate him.
What is this place?
Blackbrook Vale.
Quite lovely.
Aye, and damned dangerous. Keep your arms at the ready.
Blackbrook Vale. The name itself embodied infamy. Meave arrived expecting misty ravines, decrepit trees bound in spiders' webs and swarms of bats. What she saw was a warmly gurgling stream and the valley's gentle slopes blanketed in crocus blooms. Only a village of abandoned, ruined huts and a cemetery stretching to the horizon behind it attested to the valley's grim past.
The village seems shrouded in a guise. Be not deceived.
said the Queen.
Reynard, some men to search the environs for any sign of life.
The blood-curdling roar that came from the ruins a moment later proved the Queen's caution warranted beyond any doubt. Following the victory, the settlers' hopes seemed renewed. Could the beasts they felled have killed the previous lot of colonists? Perhaps the curse that had long hung over Blackbrook Vale was at last broken.
We thank ye, Your Majesty.
The settlers' leader said, slipping the satchel from his shoulder.
You've granted us new hope. And a new home.
The dwarves had rolled up their sleeves, were prepared to go at the huts to repair them, when one of their number cried out.
Hold! There's something here. Something reeky.
A voice most familiar, thought Meave. Yes, for it belonged to Barnabas, the rescued inventor. The gnome had elbowed his way to the fore, stood on his toes, extended his nose, and inhaled through it like a pointing hound seeking out wildlife. Ignoring all queries, Barnabas had then sat down on the brook bank, filled a glass flask with water, and was now holding it up against the sunlight, dipping into it the tip of his tongue and some strange scraps of paper extracted from the depths of the pockets of his patched coat. Finally, Barnabas stood, brushed his backside clean, and announced his findings.
Well, we know with some certainty the reason for the settlers' demise. 'Twere not beasts, no. They prowled in later, drawn by fresh graves. 'Twas the water. Oh, roll your eyes and whirl your fingers all you want, and then peer at the brook. Nary a fish. All poisoned by subterranean fumes.
The dwarves hemmed, hawed, and grumbled, and were a heartbeat from abandoning the Vale for good. Then Barnabas reached into his satchel and extracted a device of his own making he termed an aqua purificator. That is to say, a water cleaner, as odd as it may seem.
You need but siphon water through this straw. Then drink up, worry-free.
Thus Meave rode out of Blackbrook Vale, deep satisfaction in her heart. The dwarves extolled her for being bold, shrewd, and wise, while Gabor ensured this praise would likewise reach the meaty ears of Elder Hoog.
We're the dwarves of Mount Carbon, hoo-hoo-ha, hoo-hoo-ha, and 2 hammers is our sign, is our sign.
The rumors Gabor had overheard were true. Scouts returned with news of a cavern at whose mouth lay rotted logs, an indication that something of great weight may have been rolled inside. Chests full of gold, for instance. Then again, paw tracks clearly showed some beasts had made the cave their home.
Right. Decision time. Enter or scramble back down,
said Gascon, rubbing his hands together for warmth.
Please hurry. This frost is downright biting.
We've scaled this high. Foolish we'd be to descend empty-handed. Fall in behind me!
The Queen took the fore, sword in one hand, torch in the other. The flickering flame's glow illuminated the cave's interior, casting long shadows. Meave was certain some horror would leap at her at any moment. And she was not at all wrong.
Follow me! Together now!
Anyone here struggle with strong reservations when entering monster-infested pits? Asking for a friend.
Treasure trove ought to be close now. Come on!
As soon as the last beast had fallen, the Lyrians took to seeking out the treasure. Soldiers dispersed throughout the caverns in a rush, penetrating every last corner. Finally, one called out.
Got it! Got the treasure! Right here! Treasure! Shiny stuff!
A number of steel-reinforced chests lay up against the cavern wall. Meave blew the dust from the lid of one and lifted it with some difficulty. She had hoped for gold and jewels, bars of Mahakaman steel at the least. Instead, she saw thousands of time-tarnished copper coins with a hole through their center.
What's this bloody crap? Tokens of some sort?
Aye, that's right. Holy Guldens, we call them. They're, currency in Mahakam. Get our wages in them. Use them to cop victuals and hooch.
What of arms, armour, tools?
Nah. Oh, that's given to us. Clan provides it. Is that what you need? Weapons? Oh, feel the Egypt now. Brought you here for no reason.
Yet these tokens, they can be exchanged for other coin, can they not? Temerian orens or Novigrad crowns?
Aye. Doable in theory, but not at all clever. Rates are crap. See, the elders keep 'em low to make life difficult for dwarven folk. Discourage 'em from leaving Mahakam.
What's this? Common dwarves use no gold? You cannot be serious.
Yet I am. What good's gold to them? Clan gives them all they need. And victuals and hooch beyond need, they get for tokens.
Yet you trade with humans. Gold coin you take for your goods, the coin must serve a purpose. What is it?
We hoard it all. In vaults. Great piles. Down bottom lie ducats dating from the reign of that dozy ham-shanker King Dagrid.
And you do not put it to use? Acquire anything for it? Then it's true what folks say, that you love gold too much to part with it. Hoard it for pleasure, as dragons do.
Point of fact. That there's pure drivel. Gold's a metal like any other, just yellow. We hoard it for our safety.
Your safety? I fear again, I simply don't follow.
Couldn't it be simpler? Soon as human folk get it in their heads we's a thorn in their side, we'll spend it. All of it, in a jiffy. Excess coin supply, that's called. Matter of days, gold'll be worth less than sawdust. And you're tossing banks and economies, bam, on their arses. There'll be nothing left of them. They'll cave in faster than a mine shaft with rotten props. Why are you all ogling me? With human folk for neighbours, we dwarves got to be damn vigilant, as sheep round wolves.
Tokens serve me.
We must trade them. Even should we get a pittance, it will be something. The soldiers demand their pay.
Ach, your bums out the windy. Fighting men want full dixies and tankards of hooch. Coins but a means to that end.
What do you suggest then?
As I've been saying, the tokens we use to purchase nourishment and mead, and what you've got in those chests, why, that'll do to fund a feast the likes of which Mahakam's not seen since Brewer was sworn in as Elder-in-Chief. The fighting men'll eat and drink their fill, carouse about and forget their due and pay right quick. And invite the local dwarves to feast with you, and the clans'll look kinder on you too.
Caution be damned.
Your Grace, I feel obliged to remind you we are at war with Nilfgaard, and every copper...
Should go to building our army, I know. But we live but once, Reynard. Sir Gabor, take the tokens, and arrange me a feast so grand that Ebdahi himself shall hear us revel.
As Meave's force could not possibly fit in a tavern, the feast was laid out in a storehouse. Crates arranged in rows served as tables and benches, while the windows were festooned with lion's foot and pasqueflower. Great barrels of mead, cognac, and vodka were rolled in, and when the soldiers saw this, they broke out in cheers and laughter that lasted till dawn.
Pour us another round, you lovable Lyrian bastards!
For he's a jolly good a jolly good dwarf.
There was food and drink enough for the dwarves of the pass, who, with Meave's men, raised tankards in hand and voices in song the night through. To see them sharing tales and playing cards, one would not believe that anywhere down the mountains, through woods and across plains, humans and dwarves might, for the softest slight, leap at each other, murder in their eyes. Riding past a mine, Meave noticed a group of miners gathered around the entrance to a shaft. Frost had settled on their moustaches and beards, suggesting they had been there for some time. The Queen summoned Gabor and asked him to determine the reason for this sit-in. He returned after a few minutes and announced the most curious thing.
They're waiting for the knocking to stop.
Meave's frown prompted Gabor to explain in greater detail.
According to our laws, dwarves can't go into a mine if there's knocking coming from inside. We're obliged to wait for the ruckus to quieten down.
Ah, yes. Our own miners share this superstition.
Reynard interjected.
They say the knocking is that of a treasurer gnome, a kind of mine ghost.
With all due respect, your miners are dimwits.
Gabor said, patting Reynard on the shoulder.
Knocking means an imminent and abrupt discharge of the potential pliable energy of rock formations. In other words, ye ken, a rock burst. Except usually it's all done in a day or two, whereas these lads have been waiting going on 2 weeks. Foreman's grown impatient. He'd like to send someone down the shaft, have him see what's at issue, but, well, the code forbids us from doing anything of the sort.
If in this manner I can gain favour among your brethren,
Sighed the Queen, dismounting.
so be it. I shall descend and see what the problem is.
The shaft was too narrow to fit an entire army, so Meave and a small unit of men entered the mine, miners' lamps in hand, and hearts in their mouths. The rhythmic knocking coming from the bowels of the mountains, distorted and multiplied, was unnerving. Soon the company arrived at the place that seemed the source of the knocking. Gabor put his ear to the rock and listened for several moments in silence, then struck the wall with all his might. The wall crumbled with a crash, opening a passage into another corridor, from which sprang numerous foes.
My gnome senses are telling me those definitely aren't ghosts.
Who goes there? Drop your weapons!
Nay, you drop yours!
Who just grabbed me?
Oh, apologies, Maeve. I thought you were Reynard.
Reynard! Are we winning? I can't see a bloody thing!
Stop! Stop, we surrender!
Both sides were surprised. Both fought in the weak light of torches, nearly down on hands and knees. In the end, the Queen emerged victorious, and as soon as she had returned her sword to its sheath, she asked the new prisoners a question that was on everyone's mind.
Who the devils are you?
The captives looked at each other in disbelief, as if before them stood a ghost. Finally, one of them managed to choke out a response.
Your Highness, we're your subjects.
Meave recognized the accent at once. The men came from Rivia. But what were they doing so far from home? According to the prisoner's account, after the Nilfgaardians' invasion of their kingdom, terrible poverty gripped the land. Seeking bread, some desperate inhabitants had gone to the mountains of Mahakam, engaging in wildcat mining in search of precious ores. Without asking the dwarves what they thought of this.
You know yourself, my queen.
Explained one captured Riv.
They guard their treasure real jealous-like, don't care a whit about the suffering of others. They see us starving down in valley and don't lift a stubby finger.
Sadly, the Rivians had dug close to existing corridors. When Gabor destroyed the wall that stood between them and the dwarves, they were convinced they were being attacked by monsters, so they raised arms in self-defense.
Maeve, 'tis a tough nut to ken,
said Gabor.
But let's nae kid ourselves. These men are thieves, and we must hand them over to the Mahakaman Guard.
So they may do what? Sentence them to hard labor, or hang them at once?
Said Reynard, his usual calm shaken and his voice raised.
These are your subjects, Queen. They coveted their neighbours' goods, true, but only because they had naught themselves.
If dwarves left the mountains to rob the fields of Rivia,
said the Queen after some consideration,
I'd want to judge them according to our laws. Like it or not, Bruverhoog has the same right.
But, milady, you're us queen. You swore to protect us.
From harm, yes, but not from due punishment.
With a heavy heart, Meave handed the Rivs over to the Mahakaman Guard. What happened to them, I cannot say for certain, but they were not seen again. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made Meave turn to see Reynard spurring on his panting horse, galloping at a breakneck speed towards her.
Ill tidings I bring, your grace.
Clearly. Glad tidings never arrive with such urgency.
Our scouts captured a Nilfgaardian messenger. He was travelling in disguise, and by night. When he realized his capture was imminent, he strove to destroy the letters he carried. We were able to salvage some, in parts.
Anything of interest?
Yes, there is, I fear. Your Majesty, you must listen. Consider your offer accepted. Direct Meave and her force to the agreed site. We await their arrival. Your reward shall be as agreed. Hail, Keritsa.
A traitor. We might have expected as much. Nilfgaard has shown amply that it abides only by the rules it sets. Since they have not proved able to defeat me in the field, in open battle, they seek other means. I suppose the scroll bears no name.
It does not, Your Grace.
The messenger. Have you questioned him?
Naturally, Your Grace. Alas, he knows not to whom the letter is directed. He was to leave it in an agreed spot.
I take it tidings of the whole affair have spread throughout the force?
Yes, Your Majesty. The witnesses were too many to keep this fact a secret.
We must thus assume the traitor in our ranks knows it as well, and will make no attempt to retrieve the scroll. A dead end. Have we any other leads or clues?
None, I fear, Your Majesty. We must be alert. Keep a keen eye on events as they unfold, and exercise great caution in forging new acquaintances.
Very well. Eyes wide open, all senses attuned. Yours in particular, Reynard.
Of course, my liege.
Maeve's force neared Davor's abyss. Signs of beastly feasting were not hard to find. Countless paw and claw tracks were impressed in the blood-stained snow. Among the boulders, bones picked clean were strewn about. Gascon lifted one from the ground.
Empty inside,
He said.
Something sucked out the marrow.
Maeve's soldiers feigned indifference to the grisly sight. They marched on, their stepped rhythm unwavering, a song on their lips. Yet hearing a slight tremolo in their voices, Maeve knew they merely sought to drown out their fear. A moment later, a commander's horn sounded, the signal to halt. The Queen galloped to the fore of the column and found herself at the edge of a vast, round hole in the ground. She could not see the bottom. Maeve drew her reins tight to prevent her mount from taking even one step forward.
What is this? A crater? A desiccated lake?
A mine of the strip variety.
Gabor explained.
Treasures we picked and shovelled for here. Diamonds. Till we happened on the beasts, that is.
What now?
Orion's a dam. Holds back a lake. If we can break it, water'll rush in, fill the abyss and the tunnels from which the beasts emerge. Just need to get around the mine first. Way down's on the other side.
Maeve squinted and gazed into the distance. Indeed, there was the dam. And at its foot, a swarm of beasts roiled about. Her soldiers gazed at their queen expectantly, their arms at the ready. She knew well they would rush into battle, in spite of their fear.
Gabor!
Maeve cried out over the whirling wind.
Have you bards here in Mahakam?
Course, your grace!
Then we shall give them good reason to compose this day, on the themes of courage, of heroism, of Lyria! Gee up!
And with that cry, the queen spurred her mount, grabbed a banner, and raising it high over her head, rushed headlong at the horrid swarm.
There's the way down! We need to break through and destroy the dam! It worked! Look at those stunners flounder!
Excellent work!
And indeed, bards sang of this battle soon after. For no claws or fangs could break through the wall of shields the Lyrians raised that day. And no scales could protect the beasts from the Lyrians' stinging arrows and blades.
Fight! Do not relent! Let us show these beasts! It is they who should fear us!
The queen shouted. In the end, the beasts turned to flee, yet Maeve's force cut off any chance of escape. A solid wall of men began to push the monsters ever closer to the edge of Davor's abyss. Pressed from all sides, the horrors began slipping over the precipice, screeching terribly as they fell. Silence came at last. The queen stood at the edge of the precipice, breathing heavily, leaning on her sword. From the depths of the mine came muted growls and groans.
Let's flood the damn hole,
hissed Gabor.
Before any other shite crawls out of it.
A rush of icy water suddenly rose, then just as abruptly plunged into the mine, flooding the pit. And where once lay Davor's abyss, now lay Davor's pond. Maeve descended back into the pass, exhausted and covered in beastly blood, yet also exceedingly pleased. She was one step closer to dwarven support in the war against Nilfgaard. Once the Lyrians had put some distance between themselves and the now destroyed monster lair, Meve ordered her men to pitch camp. Then she sent the quartermaster off for food and drink. The soldiers lit campfires, then set aside their weapons. Soon after, lively music and song could be heard throughout the camp.
Your Majesty,
Reynard said from behind Meve's back.
A messenger from the Elder-in-Chief.
The Queen turned to see a dwarf in a richly adorned jerkin and a shako with golden seams. She stifled her laugh into a smile and lifted her chin proudly, expecting praise and a pledge of aid in the war against Nilfgaard.
My lady, your daring deeds have come to the Elder's attention,
said the dwarf in a measured voice.
He's positively irate and demands an explanation.
Irate? But why? I and my men, we've aided you greatly.
Elder Hugh awaits at the Long Bridge. You'd be wise not to keep him there any length of time.
And with that, all the Queen's enthusiasm for a celebration was instantly gone. She waited until the fires expired and the songs died down, then gave the order to march. Gazing towards the horizon, Meve noticed a dark shape outlined against the mantle of snow that lay on the ground. It proved a tower, toppled and broken in pieces. Around it lay the ruins of other buildings, blocks hewn out of basalt rock protruding from the permafrost.
That'd be the Clan Vidmar ruins,
said Gabor, hollering over the wind.
Ridge ones had their clan seat here till earth tremors turned all into dust. Hundreds of dwarves lived here once, and now, not a living soul.
Ah! Help! Save me!
On the contrary, there was someone midst the ruins, and said someone was clearly in trouble. Meve ordered her men to find the unfortunate soul. They returned moments later, leading a dwarf whose teeth chattered. They had found him in a ruined building where he'd sought shelter from ghouls. Judging by his appearance, the dwarf had spent the better part of a week there.
Mirko Vidmar, they call me,
he said, patting down unkempt hair that seemed to reach in all directions.
I came here seeking a family heirloom, lost in the tremors and the chaos they caused. I ken the chamber where it ought to be, but, well, beasts made their lair there. I cannot drive them off on my own. But bold warriors like yous ought to cut them down in a jiffy. So, will you help?
I too have lost my home, estate,
said the Queen.
So I understand well what you feel. I shall help you recover your heirloom. Call it a win.
Mirko Vidmar's face lit up. Though he'd spent a week besieged and eating stale biscuits, and though there was a hoarfrost in his beard, he quickly trotted to the front of the column and led the Lyrian soldiers to the underground chamber. As promised, beasts awaited there.
The ruins! From there they come! Drive them back!
Let's get a move on before any others show up.
As soon as the fight was done, Mirko Vidmar ran towards a crate that stood on a pedestal, slipping on the now bloody floor. When the dwarf lifted the lid, precious stones spilled out.
Your heirloom? This?
Asked the Queen, rather puzzled.
I thought a pipe that belonged to your grandfather more likely.
Seems to me Brother Mirko wasn't wholly candid with us. This here's no heirloom, no family souvenir. It's the treasure trove of Clan Vidmar. We thought it gone for good.
Pressed for the truth, Mirko admitted no family sentiment had prompted this expedition. The dwarf had planned to leave Mahakam and start a new life among humans. Yet he did not wish to do so without sizable capital.
I can't stand to stay here a moment longer. The days, all of them, they're identical. Rise with the first cockscrow, march in double file to the latrine, crap on command, 12 hours down the shaft and home to sleep.
Mirko complained.
Want a wifey? Put in an application, in triplicate. Care to snip your beard? Elders got to approve it. You want to add buttermilk, not cream, to your mushroom soup? Clan council's got to debate it. How's a dwarf not to get balmy?
I understand the lad, no two ways about it.
Gabor sighed.
But I feel it's my duty to remind yous that what Mirko's going and doing here, well, there are laws. Treasure's due the Elder-in-Chief, not to Mirko, that's one. Second, any dwarf that wants to leave Mahakam can't take nothing but his breeches, his dixie, and his coat. So, brief like, consider well afore you make your decision, Your Grace.
I sympathise, Mirko,
said Neve.
but I'm a crowned head. I must decline. National interest requires I show the greatest possible care for my relations with Elder-in-Chief Hugh. Yet in aiding you, I could sour those greatly. I shall return the treasure to him, I must. While you do what you will.
Mirko Vidmar swore under his breath, then jostled his way through the Lyrian infantry and into the mountains, towards human lands.